Hello everyone, welcome back to Luke's Movie Talk. I'll go over some of the most recent movies I've been watching. And for this video I'll be looking at the new Netflix release, Glass Onion, which is a sequel to the Knives Out movie. But just before I get into that, make sure to like, subscribe to keep up to date with all future uploads. So to start off, I'm going to quickly go over some of the plot. So basically the film is about this character Miles, played by Ed Norton, who invites a group of his friends to come to his island and his mansion to have a reenactment of his death and have a murder mystery. But surprisingly, Benoit Blanc has also been invited for some reason, and no one really knows why at the start of the film, but as the film goes on, it's revealed why. And as the film goes on, we meet all the characters in our group. We get Catherine Hahn, we get Dave Bautista, we get a whole group of cool characters who have all got interesting dark secrets and involvements with Miles. And eventually we find out that Dave Bautista's character has died, and that's how the whole mystery unfolds, trying to find out who killed him. We see shadows in the dark of someone being shot. We have someone being poisoned. We have a load of mystery and hidden in the dark stuff, and no one really trusts anyone. And Benoit has to try and figure out who it is, and we get loads of twists and revelations, and it's a really cool, twisty plot as you would expect from a Knives Out sequel. So overall, I love the film. It's so much fun, as you would expect. At the start of the film, there was this really cool puzzle that they had, and it's basically just a big box, and it's like continuous puzzles that unlock this really strange, like egg-shaped thing, or onion, as you would say. And it's an invitation from Miles to come to his island, and it was really cool because they all called each other up on. I think it was probably like Zoom or something, and then they ended up doing it through teamwork, which is really nice to see, even though we find out later that these characters aren't particularly very nice people. I love the island setting. It's such a fun, different feel to it, because the last film was in a country house where it was still in the city, but it was still in the mainland. You could still feel connected to the rest of the world, but this island's very cut off. No one can really get there, and when they call in Dave Bautista's death in the middle of the film, no one can actually get there because the island is so cut off, and they can't actually park any boats there because the way it's set up, it's not viable, so no one can actually get there. And then Miles Bronze, who's played by Edward Norton, his crazy mansion with a literal glass onion as the main centerpiece, which is his office, and it's very on the nose, like, oh yeah, it's literally a glass onion, and it's a cool name, it's interesting, and Benoit Blanc is very like, okay, that's strange, but also very cool, and it was cool to see the centerpiece of the whole island. The cast is great. I loved everyone involved. It was a cool ensemble. Daniel Craig continues to be great as Benoit Blanc. He's such a cool character because he never overstates himself. He doesn't think he's all this and all that. He knows everything. He doesn't think that way. He just thinks of himself as a detective that tries and helps people, and he doesn't try and like put people in dangerous situations when he can avoid that, because he wants to keep people safe but also find out the truth. Edward Norton is good at playing the idiot Miles, who thinks he's a complete genius and smart ass. So at the start of the film, we find out he's set up this like fake murder mystery where he's supposedly dead. Benoit Blanc finds out straight away the whole plot, which pisses off Miles because he set the whole weekend up and now Benoit has basically ruined it. But you realise that Miles isn't particularly the smartest person, and later in the film when Benoit basically says, oh, this is this, that reveals all the bits in the plot, it's obvious that Miles isn't the brightest character and basically used other people's ideas and left clues everywhere. He was lying very out in the open a lot of the time, and this kind of annoyed Benoit because he realises he should have seen this from the start. He shouldn't have been taken away by these stupid ideas that Miles just blatantly just tried to get away with, and he did somehow. Janelle Monáe was fantastic as the twin characters, Andy and Helen. It was a great twist in the middle of the film when we find out Andy was actually killed. She was Ed Norton's partner, and Ed ended up killing her, and Helen contacted Benoit to try and find out what happened, and Helen came to the island pretending to be Andy to try and find out more information. And it's such a cool revelation. About 2/3 of the way in, we get a long flashback sequence of Helen contacting Benoit and setting up the plans to go to the island together, and basically trying to set up all the people involved to try and find out the truth. And the revelation that Helen was pretending to be Andy was such a cool part of the story, because I was like, oh my god, that's so cool, because you don't really think, oh yeah, there's twin characters. It's such a cool thing though. Catherine Hahn was good but I felt she was a very background character compared to the others. Apart from Helen, Benoit, and Miles, a lot of the other cast members were kind of second fiddles. So Catherine Hahn, even though I loved her character, it was really cool, she kind of took a back seat. And the same thing went for Leslie Odom Jr., who was the assistant to Miles. He was a cool addition, and he was like the techie character, but he was kind of second fiddle to a lot of the main focus characters, so it would have been cool to see a bit more of him, but he was cool with what he did. For one, Dave Bautista was fun and a bit crazy. I loved his eccentric character, just walking around in his Speedo with a gun in the front of it, just shooting up in the air, and not giving two monkeys about anything or anyone. He just did his own thing, and we learned later in the film that he was trying to use his girlfriend to coerce Miles to help him, and he kind of learned he's not the nicest of people, but he's just such a bizarre, eccentric character. Sometimes you just love those characters because they're so bonkers and off the wall. But while he was in the film, I did enjoy him. The two random appearances from Ethan Hawke and Hugh Grant was kind of cool. Ethan Hawke was kind of the assistant to Miles and just ushered everyone onto the ship and gave them like a vaccine for COVID, because this is set during the main part of COVID. So he gave them somewhat of a injection in the mouth to cure them, I guess. I don't really know. And then Hugh Grant is actually Benoit Blanc's husband or boyfriend, we don't know. But it was a really cool moment when it's a flashback earlier in the film. Hugh Grant just opens the door and he's just like, oh, okay, hi Hugh Grant. It was really cool to see him just there. I love the mystery and the suspense throughout the film. We don't know the full details. We see bits and pieces of information, but then later in the film, Benoit and Helen reveal the whole story, and we get the full picture of what was actually going on during the film and understand why certain characters acted certain ways. The twist surrounding Andy and Helen was a nice surprise, and the recap, about 2/3 of the way through the film, was a nice change of pace. So a lot of stuff was going on, the story was going beat by beat, and it switched it up and get this flashback, and we find out that the story didn't happen any way we thought. Helen was actually Andy, and Benoit and Helen were actually in cahoots trying to find out who the killer was. They actually knew the whole time that someone had killed Andy. So it was nice to see these parts of the story from different points of view, from characters we've now known a bit more about. I was surprised Ed Norton almost won. He was too simple-minded for Blanc. So basically, we find out earlier in the film that Blanc doesn't do well with simple things like Cluedo. He likes to get into like proper detail and proper like smart storylines, whereas Cluedo's too simple. And he kind of compared Edward Norton's plot to like a Cluedo game, because it was so basic and dumbed down that he was like, why did I fall for this? It was so stupid. And he even calls Ed Norton's Miles stupid because the plan was so like dumb, and he was annoyed at himself for letting himself fall for it, which I thought was quite funny. But in the end, Helen's character brought the other group around, and they ended up going against Miles, which was a nice end bit of the film. I love the chaotic ending with Helen just trashing the building, blowing it up, and basically making the whole group turn against Miles. And I felt it was nice because you thought she was going to lose after the evidence against him was burnt, and she was like, nah, I'm not having any of it, and she just destroys everything and gets everyone on her side, which was really nice. I also enjoyed Blanc's revelation explanation of all the events. He basically brought all the group together, explained what happened, how Miles is this idiot, and then Helen walks in and explains more details, and it was a cool just like, section of the film where it's just like bang, 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 revelation, revelation, truth, truth, and everyone's just about everything. I loved seeing the events from different points of view, furthering the story. So we end up like midway through the film, we see Helen playing as Andy get shot, and we think she's dead. But then we find out later in the film that she was shot, but there was a book in her pocket, so it hit the book and stopped her from being killed. And they faked the death by using hot sauce as blood. So they fooled everyone. It was cool to like see the different points of view of what happened. And it was scary how he can make people betray friends and straight up lie. So this group of friends basically betrayed their friend Andy and went to Miles' side because of how much influence he has. And it was scary to see how much influence he has over them and how much control. And these people are just horrible at the end of the day, and they kind of redeem themselves by going against Miles, but at the end of the day, they're not nice people. A couple of minor issues I had with the film was that the fact that Blanc kept getting bamboozled was kind of unbelievable, even with the explanation. So you find out later in the film that Miles was straight up lying, even though he had done things in front of people, but they still believed him. And like the simple plans and stuff, it was just so... I kind of don't believe Blanc would fall for this stuff, but at the end of the day, they explain it away, kind of, by saying Blanc gets like bamboozled by these simple plans because they're that simple and so dumbed down that he would never expect anyone to actually do this kind of thing, which I thought was quite funny. And the last thing was that Batista was only in the start and then ended up dying, and his character was obnoxious but fun to watch, and I would have liked to see more, but I understand why they used him because he was a very crazy character, and the way he went out was very interesting because they used pineapple juice because he's allergic to that to kill him. So it was an interesting, but as Blanc put it, very stupid way. But I loved it overall. But yeah, I love this film overall. It was a good sequel to Knives Out, and when it comes out on Netflix later in December, I recommend you give this a watch because I saw it in cinemas for that 1 week it was available. But when it goes on, I'm definitely going to give it another watch because it was just that much fun. But yeah, my thoughts on this film. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to keep up to date with all future episodes. Until next time, I will see you all later.